It is about that time, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into FFPC Insider Access live here on the Better Sports Network for Fantasy Football Night in America. Hi, hello, and welcome. I am your host at Eric Balkman on the X. My name is Eric Balkman. You know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and of course the FFPC, myffpc.com, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. We've got a great show for you tonight, and joining me on the program is the one, the only, the Kramer-centric on X, of course, Ryan Kramer, the co-founder of the Sports Gambling Podcast, the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. You hear his work on VSiN as well. Ryan, so glad that you are hopping aboard tonight. Now, part of the reason I have you on, too, is, and we'll talk about pros versus Joes at the end, what night are you drafting in pros versus Joes?
We are drafting on Monday.
Monday, okay.
Yes. Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, I feel like a whole bunch of events are happening right now that help me remind myself that football season's about to be here. One of those is chatting with you every summer. So yeah, good to be here, and happy 2025 football.
Yeah, it's exciting. This is our second to last show in July. We'll do our last show of July next week. I'll tell you, all you viewers, what's coming up later on with our final show in July. But then we're into August, man. And then it's just like at the fantasy free-for-all, which is going to be great. And if you're looking to maybe jump in some tournaments and jump in some drafts prior to everybody else jumping into it, check out the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. $1 million grand prize is at stake. $350 will get you into it. You're going to get a $50 discount on every third team you get. Drafts both live and slow running now. The 7 Bananas promo has been live. We have given away 35, I think now, free FFPC best ball tournament teams. We've given away 3 FFPC main event teams for those players that keep getting the 7 pick multiple times in a row. And if you get it 5 times in a row, you're going to get a free jungle safari for 4, courtesy of the FFPC. If that's not your jam, we'll just give you $50,000 instead, and you can do with that what you will. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that, along with the FFPC main event, which is our flagship tournament, $1 million grand prize there as well, $6 million plus prize pool. You can jump in both slow and live drafts going on there. The FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments are live as well. $300,000 grand prize in the Classic Best Ball tournament. That's going to set you back $125 to enter, but there's also a $100,000 runner-up prize in that as well. The Superflex Best Ball tourney, $35 to enter, and you're still eligible for a $100,000 grand prize there. 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks there. Dynasty startups, of course, going on myffpc.com. They start at $100. They go all the way up to $5,000 for your entry fee. So whatever price point you're looking for, we have your home for Dynasty Fantasy Football at the FFPC. And to second that motion, 2,000 plus leagues over the last 15 years. None have ever folded. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Shout out to our producer, Matt Deutsch, tonight. Let's get into it. A sigh of relief, Ryan, with in New York Jets training camp today. I was just going about my normal Thursday morning, and then all of a sudden my X feed is hit with all these potential season-ending injury, doomsday Chicken Little reports about Justin Fields, who is apparently going to be okay. The latest we have on this from the Jets about 4 hours ago, Fields is considered day-to-day after he dislocated a toe in his right foot this morning. The team stated today, Justin Fields avoided serious injury and significant missed time. There is no fracture apparently as well. Connective tissue, we don't know. Maybe there's some damage there, but we have no idea what's going on there. But ultimately, given how bad this could have been, this is a positive result, a positive report on Justin Fields. A little over 6 weeks he has until the start of the season. The Jets take on the Steelers in week 1 in the Aaron Rodgers Revenge Bowl. I bring this up, Ryan, number one, because it's very newsworthy. And number two, if we look at where Fields is going in the FFPC Big Gorilla right now, and anytime we cite ADP on the show, we always give a shout out to Fantasy Mojo at Fantasy Mojo on the X, fantasymojo.com. That's Darren Armani. He is the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joes. And if you are playing in the FFPC, highly recommend you get a subscription to fantasymojo.com. I bring this up also because he is quarterback 11 at the 1108 right now. This is behind Murray and Prescott. It's ahead of Purdy and Caleb Williams. You and Sean just did your Jets preview episode of the Sports Gambling Podcast, and it was pretty glowing about the Jets. this Fields news, like obviously you're holding your breath a little bit. It seems like everything's okay. Are you adjusting the way you're drafting Fields at this point based on this news? Or is this sort of has it become a non-story less than 12 hours later?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty wild, the timing. We've done this a couple times where we break down a team. We know, like, we ended our team preview 10 p.m. Pacific time last night. So Wednesday, July 23rd, and basically woke up to the news. And yeah, I think as far as adjustments, I mean, I had just finished getting into a scenario where I was buying into the positive, tail outcomes, and a lot of those having to do with Justin Fields running the ball, Justin Fields hitting ceiling outcomes with rushing touchdowns, maybe leading the league in rushing touchdowns 100-1, leading the division in rushing touchdowns 12, 15-1. So yeah, to see that the toes are always tricky. They seem to linger. I'll wait and see. I'm not a doctor. It does seem like all of the scary stuff didn't happen, but let's see how he's doing. I side note, I love them week 1 too, as far as which side of that revenge battle I like. I love taking the points with the Jets there. So yeah, a lot of things for me to think on, but as of right now, seems like it's not serious enough for me to adjust. And yeah, I love Justin Fields as a second quarterback in these best ball drafts, because I mean, I think they're leaning into the run game, and I'm sure we'll talk about Braylon Allen later, but yeah, there is a lot to be optimistic about when it comes to like this team and their ability to at least be a power running team.
Ryan, if you were drafting in the FFPC main event, the big gorilla best ball tournament or whatever, and you had Fields on the clock, like dialed in, like, okay, this is my quarterback, I would have taken had he not gotten hurt. Are you still taking him at that same point, or are you bumping him down a little bit just because of the nebulous situation where we don't exactly know everything? And this is going to kind of depend upon over the next few days or weeks or whatever to see how he bounces back from this.
I mean, if we find out he's missing games, I think certainly. So I guess from that perspective, maybe I'm holding, but maybe everyone else being scared off just allows me to draft him a little bit more. I still will find myself having a hard time passing on him because of what, at that time in the draft, to have that type of ceiling opportunity, it's hard for me to pass that up.
I want to move from New York all the way to Tampa. Jenna Laine, who covers the Buccaneers for ESPN, reporting yesterday that Chris Godwin underwent a second ankle procedure this past spring. Reminder to everybody that Godwin dislocated his ankle in week 7 last season. It was one of the worst nights of my 2024, Ryan. It was right after me, as a Brewers fan, saw Pete Alonso launch a 2-run homer off of all-star closer Devin Williams to send the Mets on in the MLB postseason. And if it couldn't get any worse, one of my most drafted players last year, Chris Godwin, like 15 minutes after that home run by the polar bear, I see Godwin dislocate his ankle in a meaningless game. It was an awful, awful Thursday night. It's been more awful for Chris Godwin trying to recover from this. He has not been participating in team activities this offseason. He has officially started camp on the PUP list, and now we're kind of finding out reasons why maybe he's been slower to recover than what we thought. Jenna Laine says this was a minor procedure. It was more of a cleanup procedure, but it also was not a surprise that he had this. Now, if he remains on PUP for a significant amount of time, then yeah, exponentially he's going to be falling down my draft boards. 29 years old, and Ryan, I brought this up on one of the Pros versus Joes broadcasts earlier this week, and the timeline of this was Godwin dislocates his ankle in week 7. He signs a significant deal, contract extension with Tampa in March, and then just over a month later, the Buccaneers use their first-round pick on Emeka Egbuka. I present that without context. These are the facts of the story, or the facts of the case, as Kevin Bacon from A Few Good Men would say, and they're indisputable. Now, take that from what you will. How are you reading between the lines? How are you handling this Chris Godwin thing? You're going to be drafting in Pros versus Joes on Monday night, and there's going to be a time where you and Sean are considering Emeka Egbuka. There's going to be a time where you guys, I think, at some point would be considering Chris Godwin here. How should we be readjusting the way that we're drafting Buccaneers receivers, specifically Godwin and Egbuka, based on this piece of knowledge?
We were very in on the McMillan piece last year. And so we were dialed into this passing game. And I think people forget how good Godwin was in those first 6 weeks last year. Three games north of 22 points in full PPR. So yeah, I mean, I think them drafting the receiver is, the timeline is very interesting, but them drafting the receiver, spending the draft capital on Ibuka there tells you everything you need to know about the Godwin situation. Clearly they're uncertain about it. And yeah, I think we see lots of players start training camp on PUP. And then it's part of the plan. You find out later it was part of the plan. They were always going to get ramped back up and show up week 3. The problem here is I think everything else the team has done makes me think they don't know when he's going to be available. So if you're asking me, like the bet for me is he going to play 17 games? Absolutely not. Is he going to start the season on the PUP? I think probably, which means you got to cap him out at maybe 12 games. And so, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I'm not drafting him. I'm hoping someone else is going to pull that trigger because I, to your point, I'd much rather end up with Evans or Ibuka or even McMillan. So unfortunately, because man, his efficiency was so good last year. I mean, he even had a 35-point game in his shortened season. So love the player. I just don't think it's going to be this year for him. And if it is, I think it's down the stretch. So yeah, maybe if you draft him and you're in a tournament style, he might show up for you at week 17.
Chris Godwin right now has an ADP in the Big Gorilla of wide receiver 37 at the 705. Ryan, if I were to ask you if you're drafting, like, Pros versus Joes is a good example, or the Big Gorilla, just any tournament with the FFPC, if this guy is still available to you in the mid 10th, would you consider him there? Or is that still too rich for your blood based on what we know about him at this moment?
That might be, but I think for me, the way that I build teams generally, I'm probably in a position at that point where I'm loading up on running backs because I'm probably doing something that resembles running back 0. And I'm looking probably to take tight ends and running backs in that range. And I've probably already locked down my receiver room. You won't find me taking too many, old question marks in my receiving core. It just feels like a wasted pick. Give me high upside and unknown, or just sturdy and steady. So yeah, Godwin's probably off my board if I'm being completely honest.
Okay. Yeah. And that's fair. I drafted him early on, before I knew about this. And then, over the last, I would say 72 hours, roughly, it's totally flipped on its head. And in the mid 7th round, I mean, you look at some of the guys going after Godwin: Myers, Deebo Samuel, Addison, Diggs, Ricky Pearsall, even, who, and we'll talk about him later on. I think that injury, I'm not too concerned about. Khalil Shakir, Josh Downs. I mean, all these guys represent, to me, more upside than Godwin right now, based on the injury and how significant it is. Not the injury, but the recovery from the injury. Another receiver who may or may not be off your board, based on the latest news that we've gotten from Adam Schefter from ESPN, is Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin. He did not report to training camp this past Tuesday, and he did not show up for a conditioning test that was the kickoff to Commanders training camp. McLaurin is looking for a new deal, and the team could fine him up to $50,000 for every missed day of practice that he doesn't show up. McLaurin will turn 30 years old this year. He was the Commanders' top target last year. He is expected to be the Commanders' top target for Jaden Daniels this year. He has been in the league long enough. I don't know how important training camp is for him to get ready, other than just to avoid those, those pesky soft tissue injuries that you certainly pick up when you show up to camp late. And we want to see him in camp right now. We don't have that. We have to react to this, Ryan, as fantasy players, and how we handle the Terry McLaurin absence. He is wide receiver 19. He is going in the 406 right now of the FFPC Big Gorilla. This is Harrison, Evans, Rice, DJ Moore neighborhood. That's where he's going right now. As far as the tumble, it really hasn't happened yet. Maybe it won't happen at all. Is this a nothing burger for you? I always hate talking about contracts in July, because I feel like by August, early September, they're always resolved at that point. What are you doing with Terry McLaurin, knowing that he is missing time right now? This is not a hold in, it's a hold out. I don't know if that's significant to you at all, but with McLaurin out right now and not practicing with the Commanders, how significant is he moving down your draft board?
Not yet. You got to give it some time. I think, pass rushers and wide receivers, these holdouts tend to be silly because they just get it done. And I think with McLaurin, maybe it's a little trickier because he's not resetting a market. He's a little older, but come on, this is very easy. You paid Deebo Samuel more than you're paying Terry McLaurin. And I think in no universe is Deebo Samuel more important to this offense than Terry McLaurin. So perhaps it's that. It is also the last year of his deal. So the combination of those two things, Terry McLaurin, also upstanding citizen. I have not heard a single peep from him in any sort of controversial way. So him saying, "Hey, let's get this worked out," I think he just wants to put a little urgency to say, "Hey, you went out and paid another receiver. That wasn't me. I didn't really like that. And so let's get this sorted. Make me the highest paid receiver on the team and do it because you're in that rookie window." So I'm not adjusting Terry McLaurin. I don't end up with a ton of him because I tend to like some of the other options in the range. But I'm not scared off of him yet because he will be if he's missing, like, this is a big deal for Commander fans. He's a big part of why that offense works. And, if they mess around and let this go too long, it's not like Jaden Daniels is this seasoned vet. He was in the league for 1 year. And so they need all the reps they can get. I'm not worried yet, but if he's still not there in a week, I'm starting to get a little bit worried, and I'm probably starting to allow some bias push him further down my board.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, right? I mean, you got to let this breathe a little bit. And to your point, I'm not bumping him down yet. Quite frankly, I mean, if there was a reason to bump down Terry McLaurin this year, this is like third on the list. I bump him down because he's turning 30. I bump him down because his efficiency was super, like at a super high level last year with Jaden Daniels. I bump him down because he's due for touchdown regression. I don't bump him down for this yet, although this would go with it. I have only, Ryan, I think drafted McLaurin once this year. And I always say these guys that I've drafted once, they're always my FOMO picks. Like, just in case there's something there, I'll at least have them in one spot. You had posted this on X as a response to this, and I want to bring this up regarding Jaydon Blue. I am drafting in a lot of rookie drafts, dynasty rookie drafts in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship right now, which I know is weird. Who has rookie drafts in late July? I actually kind of like it because I have all these rookie drafts immediately after the NFL draft. And then, stuff happens and we get like 2.5 months later. And then the rookie draft ADP is totally mixed up again because of what we found out about training camp and everything going on with these teams. And I just took Jaydon Blue, who tumbled. This is a player that was going basically in the mid, maybe late second round of FFPC Dynasty rookie drafts. I got him in the late third in Jaydon Blue, and I feel really good about it, despite this report from Locked On Cowboys. Former Cowboys coach Glenn Smith said that the Cowboys coaches, quote, have expressed that Jaydon Blue is borderline lazy and that the team is not thrilled with his work habits. Jaydon Blue was a 5th-round pick this past April in the NFL draft held in glorious Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was going to be competing with not only Javonte Williams, but Miles Sanders to try to be the number 1 running back for the Cowboys. Marcus Mosher also points out in a piece that he published, there have been no reports of Jaydon Blue working with the first team offense during OTAs or minicamp at all. And maybe this is the reason for that. Maybe not. I don't know. Connecting the dots, I think you could make that case. Blue ran for 700 plus yards last year for Texas, 8 touchdowns, and a guy who probably could be a 3-down guy. And maybe he's fairly significant in year 1. But this is something we'll be monitoring. I did see about an hour or so before we went on tonight that there was a Cowboys beat writer talking about how good he looked on a big-time breakaway play that he had made in practice today. So I'm clearly still buying the dip on Jaydon Blue. I would in redraft leagues as well. I've grabbed him in a few spots there. This does not necessarily concern me all that much, and I think it concerns you even less than it concerns me, right?
I mean, as a Cowboys hater, I love to see this kind of stuff. Between this and Jerry grabbing the mic, always good for content. But these types of stories are generally silly. One, this reeks like Cowboys intended for the media to get their whole hands on this to send player a message. The Cowboys, more than most franchise, tend to like to use the media to send certain messages. And two, to your point, it's not like we've heard too many positives, but let training camp happen. We know running backs tend to look good in the preseason games in training camp. So I'm sure we'll hear about the opposite. That being said, like from a, what do we do with this information? I have no idea. I'm not generally one to draft a ton of Cowboys, but this running back room situation is a complete mess. And you got to expect someone is going to do something in here. I just wonder if it's going to be, a resurgence Javonte Williams or this like young, because the interesting about Jaydon Blue is he doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be gifted like a huge role. It's going to be situational. It's going to be kind of big play hunting. And so if he's already kind of lazy, I wonder if they're going to make him earn it with special teams, or I have no idea, but I'm certainly not drafting him. I'm like I said earlier, I'm not one to take old guys, especially ones that I think might be dusty, and Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders both kind of fit that mold as well. So I've kind of been out on the Cowboys running back room, but how do you not at least like pay attention to the situation here? Maybe maybe the Blue news causes him to drop, and if you like him, you grab him. But yeah, I also need to be waiting and seeing that moment he has the good practice or the good preseason game.
Jaydon Blue is running back 49. He is going at the 1202 in the FFPC Big Gorilla. That means he is being drafted as an RB5 behind Dylan Sampson, behind Austin Eckler, behind Rashad White and Ray Davis. I could be wrong on Jaydon Blue. Like maybe this report will ring true and maybe we'll see more of it. But in the 12th round, it's not going to kill me. In the 12th round, I only see upside here. And I don't draft in fear. I draft with upside in mind. And so to me, Blue is still at a point where I want to take him. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But hopefully I already have 3 or 4 running backs in front of him at that point to count on if Blue does not come through. And it is the Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders show. God, I mean, just saying that, I feel like I need a napkin to catch all that crap coming out of my mouth. It's disgusting. All right. Speaking of disgusting, let's talk about Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts now this is an interesting thing. I was talking about this on my local radio show today about how it's important to be paying attention to everything going on in camp, not just injuries, but other subtle stuff. And this was subtle. Will McFadden, who covers the Falcons for the team, reports that Kyle Pitts has mostly been working with the Falcons wide receivers so far in practice. Now he's been moving around the formation. That's nothing new. He's normally done that in practice. But it is notable that he has been practicing with the wide receivers here. He entered the league as a tight end. Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points said that Pitts is one of these guys that is just positionless guy, right? He's not a good enough blocker to be a tight, like an every down tight end. And clearly whatever he's doing for the stuff we care about, the catches, the targets, the touchdowns, the yardage, he's not been good enough there as well. This is a player that has not been able to use his size and speed to his advantage in mismatches for whatever reason. And now it seems like, well, I'm going to stop talking because Ryan, I got to get your read on this. Is this a good thing for Kyle Pitts that he's working with the receivers as far as fantasy goes? Because that's quite frankly all we care about. When you saw this, what was your reaction to it?
Well, I got a good chuckle that this is Kyle Pitts season. This is Kyle Pitts' back season. And, as a general hater, I remember when he came in the league and you watch his tape at Florida, and it was this tight end who was constantly running over the middle wide open, no one touching him, and getting these wide open passes and just galloping. And then he got to the league. There was a little bit more traffic, and maybe it's anecdotal. I watch all the games, but he trips over his own feet more than any other player I've ever seen. And maybe he is just one of those too big, too fast, too uncoordinated to get it done. Him being a receiver, great. That probably just removes the element of him not blocking, which he was never really too keen on. And honestly, when the closer they lined him up to the line of scrimmage, it did seem like that impacted his ability to get into his route. So maybe you're aiding his potential to like be useful as a real NFL player, but I don't see how this helps him as a fantasy guy. I don't see, they're going to run him as a big slot. Or they're going to be running enough 11 personnel to get him out there with Darnell Mooney and Drake London. I'm not getting fooled again by Kyle Pitts, or I've never really gotten fooled by him, but I'm certainly not buying him this year, even in a tight end premium league. We just did our Falcons preview, and I think that Michael Penix possesses a ton of variance in his performance this year. And I think, like in fantasy, like the correlation with the tight end and the quarterback performance there is going to be real. And I think like for me, I think there's a very real version of this team that just doesn't need Kyle Pitts. And so maybe them putting him in the receiver room is them trying to salvage something, but not interested in fantasy. And that, I'm coming from a place where I think Bijan is a very good pick at the top of the draft.
Oh, we're definitely going to get into Bijan Robinson with you for sure. We got Fantasy Jeopardy coming up. I think that he might be one of your questions, which will be the answer in Fantasy Jeopardy. Kyle Pitts, I'm looking at this right now. There is a club option for this year, which I do believe they exercised because he was a first round pick. So he's under contract with that. Well, yeah, obviously they exercised it because he's a Falcon. Idiots. Okay, the Falcons will have Kyle Pitts this year. He is an unrestricted free agent after this season. And Ryan, to your point, maybe this is like, this is like Hail Mary time. Like we got to find something that Kyle Pitts can do. And maybe working with the receivers is something. You say you've never been fooled on Pitts. And I am with you on this because year one, I just was not willing. This is before like the rookie tight ends really exploded. So I was still in my phase of like, rookie tight ends, they're not worth it in redraft leagues. So I stayed away from that. And then he had a great season. So then in year two, I was still out on him because then his price was sky high and I wasn't going to be drafting him. And then basically from there on out, I've always avoided. But Ryan, what if I told you in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tight End Premium Tournament, where $1 million is going to the team that finishes in first place. What if I told you that Kyle Pitts is no longer a 9th round pick? He's no longer a 10th round pick. He is hanging, clinging on to the 11th round. 11-11 is his ADP, tight end 17. You could very well have 2 tight ends on your team prior to drafting Pitts in the 11th. Does Pitts in the 11th do anything for you? Or are you still say like Balky, no, it's not worth it. I'm out. Let somebody else take him. I don't care what his price is. And that's still too rich.
Unfortunately, I think the guys going around him in that range, Isaiah Likely, probably more interesting for me. Basically every other tight end going in that range is more interesting. So no, I think I'd still be out on Kyle Pitts, but yeah, I think when you're making him a receiver, you're saying, well, we might as well get something out of this. And hey, a $10 million receiver is actually pretty cheap. So maybe we can see it as a value play.
We don't often have breaking news on this show, and I think we can move on past this because it's not fantasy related, but multiple sources reporting, Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter among them. Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle that the Raiders signed last March to a 4-year, $110 million contract. It's about a year and a half ago. They are releasing him with the designated of terminated vested veteran. He is no longer a Raider. He's going to be a free agent. Christian Wilkins is no longer a part of Las Vegas. Brian, this is really shocking here.
I wonder what I mean, this is a guy, this was like a cornerstone guy. I know this was a guy, like this is a very close friend of Dexter Lawrence. So as a Giants fan, it was like, ooh, he could come join Sexy Dexy. I mean, I wonder what what happened. Clearly he was not rehabbing or treating his rehab well. There's got to be some dirt here. Have you ever seen a club do this? I feel like seeing someone getting cut while rehabbing from a serious injury, freshly signed, right? Tons of guaranteed money on that contract. Something bad happened here. And it'll be interesting to track this story, but I mean, as someone who, again, already broke down the Raiders on the Sports Gambling Podcast, was kind of high on them, and part of it was hopeful that he would return and kind of anchor that defensive line next to Max Crosby. This is tough if you're a Raiders fan. It's
really bizarre. I mean, the last news we got on this was Wilkins being placed on the PUP list on Monday, and Pete Carroll said that the timeline was for his foot injury was uncertain. Now, most of the time that in this offseason he's been in a walking boot, I think that we can safely assume that there was some sort of setback in this injury. But I mean, still, what's wrong with putting him on IR, or just knocking him out for the year, and then you still have him for the remaining 3 years of his contract? I don't know. This is something that's evolving. Stuff that I'm trying to wrap my head around. And now we're trying to find out, where's the next destination for Christian Wilkins? Where could he go? I will say, and I know my Packers won't sign him, but they could use some depth along the defensive line. Just saying. But we'll see what happens with Christian Wilkins going forward. Let's keep it over on the left coast where you are, Ryan, and go to Santa Clara, San Francisco, the Bay Area, Fisherman's Wharf. Head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, said that he would be surprised if Ricky Pearsall was not practicing by Sunday. Now, this is the Pearsall thing. This is something that I think I've always fought against, covering fantasy football year round. You don't want to overrate things. But I was looking at this situation. I'm like, okay, so this dude was hurt like in minicamp in May, right? And he missed the rest of minicamp. And now here we are in, what is it, 2 months later, 2.5 months later, and he's still on. Now he's on the PUP list, which preseason PUP doesn't mean a whole lot because they can take him off take him off that list at any time. And Shanahan now thinking that he's going to be practicing by Sunday. There was a little dip in fantasy. Like it's weird. The Niners wide receivers, Ryan, and I don't know if you've tried to wrap your head around this yet, but you look at the Niners wide receivers. Deebo Samuel is now in DC. Ricky Pearsall is dealing with a hamstring injury for the last 2.5 months. By the way, he had a hamstring injury coming into last season, too, before he got shot, if you remember that. Jawan Jennings has allegedly asked for a new contract. He is practicing. He's reported. Shanahan said he's never formally asked for that, so I guess that's good, but that's still, noise that we have to pay attention to here. And then who am I forgetting? Pearsall, Jennings, Samuel. Oh, and Ayuk, my God. I mean, we don't know, if he's going to practice in camp at all. We don't know like what the timetable is on this. Like this could be a situation that lingers into October, November, or maybe even beyond. So Niners wide receivers, and I guess I'll expand it to include all three of these guys, basically. How are you handling this? Because I happen to be pretty bullish on the Niners this year. The schedule's really good. Kittle's at the peak of his powers. They're going to get McCaffrey back, who sounds like he's healthy. He's firing on all cylinders. I think Purdy's in for a big year, but they still need some receivers on the field here. When you look at this Pearsall news, the Jennings stuff, the Ayuk stuff, what are you and Sean doing? What are you going to do in pros versus Joes? What have you been doing in your draft so far this year with these three wide receivers in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I know Sean very high on Pearsall. It sounds like, I don't know, like you said, the early training camp pup stuff kind of, a lot of times it's just a way to take it slow with a player. Now, I hate the repeat offense with the soft tissue stuff. And I think with the Niners, they have a ton of receivers. They have a ton of depth. DeMarcus Robinson's in the building, former Giant Isaiah Hott. I think they have some bodies, Jacob Cowing, but I think
Cowen just not to interrupt you, but Cowen just got a hamstring injury yesterday too.
So there you go.
It's crazy.
So I actually, my handicap of all of this is I think this pushes more into Kittle. I think I've seen a couple of the San Francisco beat reporters mention how, Kittle hasn't had a 100 target season since 2019. This is kind of shaping up to be one of those seasons. So yeah, I mean, if I was betting on where the targets were going to go, I would definitely be upticking Kittle a ton. He's also someone that, in my prep for this season, he's been pretty consistent. And I know that he still needs some spike weeks to get there for the season sample, but yeah, the biggest upgrade to me would be Kittle, but I'm still in on Pearsall. I still think that with the style of offense that they could run this year, with McCaffrey firing, with Kittle firing, like Pearsall was getting open. Pearsall is slippery, and that's kind of the anticipation get open guy. Kind of works with Purdy's style as well. And so, if I was picking one of them, it would be Pearsall. So hopefully there's a dip. I don't think he's dropping too much based off this news, although because it's now being pretty widely reported, like it's not a big deal. He'll be back. But yeah, no, I think for me, it's Kittle. Kittle's the biggest upgrade of all of these pass catchers in San Francisco.
I think you mentioned the spike weeks with Kittle. To me, that's why I've always kind of stayed away from him in managed leagues, because I just hate how schizophrenic he could be. My apologies on that term. But with George Kittle, it's like spike weeks were never a problem for me. He always had the spike weeks, and then last year he really put it together. And I don't know if this is a Mandela effect at all, but I've always kind of faded Kittle because I always felt like he was hurt. Ryan, I look back and he doesn't miss a whole lot of games. So I don't know why I was thinking that Kittle, maybe it's a style of play. I just assume he gets hurt. He's out there a lot. And I think he's in for a big season. To your point about the receivers, I've got no shares of Ayuk. I think I have one share of him on a dynasty team. And then as far as the other two guys, I've been kind of splitting it between Pearsall and Jennings. I was in on Pearsall early, and then I feel like I was like, I should really pepper some Jennings in here too. So I'm probably about even on those guys right now. Slight lean towards Pearsall. He's got the draft pedigree. Jennings obviously showed out last year in a way that we've never seen before. And this was a position switch too, where he was sort of like a slot receiver. And then obviously he had to go outside when Ayuk went down. And he showed out. So good for him. But I still lean towards Pearsall here on that. Okay. Los Angeles. Let's go there for the Chargers. Daniel Popper, who covers the team for The Athletic, reported yesterday that there was, quote, significant movement among the wide receivers yesterday. Quentin Johnston, he talked about his ball tracking looked vastly improved from 2024 to what he's seeing in training camp. However, and remember, the Chargers started training camp last week. So they're already, this is day 7, I want to say, for them, like day 7 or day 8. A couple of days ago, he dropped a wide open pass over the middle, and then his confidence seemed to have dissipated. I know this is one play that we're overrating it, but this is what we do. This is what we talk about. We're breaking it down here. And why is that interesting? Because this is what we've seen over the course of his career since he got drafted by the Chargers out of TCU. He was better this year through the first 5 practices of camp, in the opinion of Popper, which is good. Jalen Reagor, to talk about some of the other receivers, was running with the first team offense for part of the time. And then he had a hamstring issue, so he sat out part of the practice yesterday. Trey Harris and Keandre Lambert-Smith, who is also a fellow rookie, capitalized on that. Harris, dude, there's no earthly fantasy football draft where I'm taking Jalen Reagor over Trey Harris. But I think you have to understand at this point, Reagor was still running in front of him. Is this a veterans thing that Jim Harbaugh is doing to give Reagor the spot and Harris has to overtake him? I don't know. But here's my point on the Chargers, and I'll let you weigh in on this. Quentin Johnston, fine later on in best ball. I'm still grabbing him there. Managed leagues, I'm still drafting Trey Harris. I still think, and I don't know, there are so many draft pundits out there, because I was not big on Trey Harris, and there are so many people that I respect in the industry, whether it comes to collegiate analysis, whether it comes to NFL draft analysis, that were really high on Trey Harris's skills ascending and being really good in the NFL. So I ended up taking him in a few spots based on that, even though I'm not the biggest Harris guy. But then Mike Williams retires, Ryan. And you have Ladd McConkey, you have Conklin, who's to me a jag at tight end, and then Rondé Gadsden, a rookie behind him. They're going to have to throw the ball at some point. So I'll let you weigh in on this. I mean, McConkey's McConkey. We don't have to talk about him. But when it comes to Harris, when it comes to Johnston, when it comes to some of these other guys, who's fantasy worthy for Kramer centric in 2025 for the Chargers?
Well, Trey Harris is certainly exciting. I mean, as a Giants fan, watched a lot of the Ole Miss tape from the past couple of years. I don't mind Trey Harris. I mean, I think with guys that come out of offenses like that, you just have to see them run routes. They don't run a lot of routes in college. They come to the pros. Some of them can run routes, some not. Trey Harris has been getting open. I'm a big fan of watching those OTA mini camp, training camp film. I got a film fetish there, and man, he's been getting open. I also think when you have Harbaugh strapped in with the cleats at the podium talking about how Quentin Johnston is going to be like a playmaker for this team this year, he's either pushing that belief narrative or there's something there. So yeah, I would probably, putting Ladd aside as the clear number 1, I would probably be drafting Trey Harris. I'm kind of aligned with what you're saying. Give me the unknown of the rookie in a managed league. Fine, drafting him. Quentin Johnston, that's best ball or priority waiver if we see something early in the season. And to your point on the tight ends, yeah, no, thank you. I think the other issue with this team is it is Greg Roman. If they have their way, they're going to be leading games. The run rate compared to what it would be if they're trailing games, like Roman will throw the ball if he needs to, but he wants to run the ball. And I think they went out and drafted Omarion Hampton for a reason. So it's going to be hard for me to see more than one, maybe two pass catchers becoming useful for this team this year. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Dart throw on Harris. I don't mind taking Ladd. He's a fun guy to bet in some of the lead the league markets this year too, based on how he was closing the season there with some of that volume. Cause there's also that version. Like, why can't he be one of those 30% plus target share hogs in an offense where he's the clear alpha? So yeah, I'm weighing on Ladd. I would take the dart throw on Trey Harris, and then anything else is just, and I'm very in on Hampton too. I'm very, very in on Hampton. So I see this offense being good. I just, it's hard to want to invest in any of these receivers not named Ladd.
You know, I was going to ask you about McConkey and whether you're on board with that mid to late second round pick. And it sounds like you are. I am as well. The Hampton thing I think is interesting because God, what day was this? I think it was Monday. I think it was Monday for Pros versus Joe's number 2. We had the report that Najee Harris, like his eye injury, they don't know when he's coming back. It was very, I mean, there was nothing good said by Jim Harbaugh about that eye injury on Monday. And then lo and behold, we watched Pros versus Joe's Monday night, and John Daigle from Establish the Run grabs Omarion Hampton, who had an ADP, by the way, before this of the early 4th round. Daigle grabbed him at the 210. And this was, and I can't remember who we were talking to. I think it was Mike Shope from WGR 550. Maybe this is Tuesday. I can't remember. It's all mixed up now at this point. But Mike Shope said the plan was to take Omarion Hampton at the 212 because they didn't think anybody else was going to take him that early. And then he went at the 210. So Hampton, I'm with you. I'm in on. And it, just as an aside, and we'll wrap up this Chargers conversation on this, Ryan. If that becomes the new normal, if Hampton requires a late second round pick in an FFPC main event, FFPC Big Gorilla tournament, are you still in on him at that price?
It does feel like you're bumping up against like potential, but the pushback is very clearly like, look what Harbaugh, Roman, look what their offenses can carry. And specifically, we the narrative of Herbert not necessarily always having the best big games will bring along this running back who's going to be able to find the end zone. And, you're needing a good number of touchdowns at that point. So yeah, I guess when I look at the other running backs in that range, I still don't mind taking Hampton as compared to, like a Bucky Irving or something like that. So now as far as the Hampton versus Ladd McConkey, that becomes a very interesting debate where, that is the more likely thing to push me off Hampton, because I would much rather have a guy like Ladd McConkey, who I think just due to the position alone, he has a higher ceiling in my eyes.
Let's talk about Travis Hunter here. This is a compelling guy that I don't think I have done any fantasy football shows since the draft. And I have not asked my co-host or my guest about this, Ryan, so I'm going to ask you about it. Michael DeRocco, who covers the Jaguars, said that Liam Coen stated the team is going to give Hunter an opportunity to flip-flop within the same practice between offense and defense. He spent most of OTAs. He spent most of minicamp on the offensive side of the ball. I think because Coen said he's just a natural corner, so he needs to be exposed to the offense, to the wide receiver position more. And Coen says the team is going to give him a couple of days on offense. They're going to give him a couple of days on defense. And then when he's ready, they're going to give him the opportunity to flip-flop within the same practice. The Jaguars want this guy practicing on both sides of the ball. We know how much they gave up for him in the draft to have this unique talent on the team as well. When you look at the ADP right now in the FFPC Big Gorilla tournament, we see Travis Hunter going off the board as wide receiver 32. This is at the middle of the 6th round, Ryan. He is behind Devonta Smith, Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, Jalen Waddle, but he is going ahead of Judy, Olave, and Juwan Jennings as well. This mystery wrapped in a riddle, smothered in secret sauce, Travis Hunter for FFPC fantasy football leagues this year. How are you handling him? And what are your expectations for this guy from a fantasy football standpoint in year one?
It's just the touchdowns he's going to have to score, because there's no way in my mind that if he's playing both ways, you're just not going to get the route volume. And so you're relying on touchdowns. And this time of year, rookies generally have that probably expensive ADP. You look at the receivers he's around. Waddle, I'm taking Waddle 10 times out of 10. Judy, I'm not even a huge Judy guy, but I'm taking him over Hunter. Same with Odunze. Same, this is that Godwin range we were talking about early. Even Jacoby Myers is someone that I would probably be more interested in taking versus Travis Hunter. Now, maybe in a best ball league where I plan on having some sort of correlation, maybe it's Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter, and Trevor Lawrence or something like that. But even in those worlds, I just wonder how much volume they actually want to give him. If you want this cat to play both ways, I don't think you want to burn him out and hurt him. So having him just run additional routes just to run routes feels silly. I think red zone package feels like the obvious, and then prescribed amount of routes. Mm-hmm. I think I've drafted Travis Hunter one time, and it was what I was describing, a team that I planned on having a Jacksonville stack.
It's interesting that you say that, because while you have been shying away from Hunter at that point in the draft, I feel like I've been kind of getting really excited. I'm doing the opposite because, and I think Adam Hahn posted this too in YouTube. Travis Hunter might be full-time on both sides. People excel at not seeing things until they happen. So this is how I'm looking at it. 6th round pick in the FFPC and the KFFSC, he gets bumped up a little bit more, but not much because you got to start 3 receivers in that format. For me, I am not drafting scared, and maybe scared is not the right term. I'm drafting for upside there, understanding that, this might be a really bad pick because I don't know what his usage is going to be like. But I'm looking at that more positively. I'm looking at that more optimistically and saying, God, if this guy hits as my number 3 receiver here, this is going to be a dominant squad. And if he doesn't, well, then it's going to rely on how I'm doing with how I built my receivers after that, right? But I think I don't want to say more often than not, but I mean, I probably got Hunter on maybe 4 or 5 teams out of, I don't know how many I've drafted so far, but I feel like I haven't been shying away from it. Now, maybe that's wrong. And you give me some good reasons to rethink that next time I'm faced with that decision. But that's what I've been doing up until this point. Now, we're very excited about the Jaguars offense this year. At least I am. One offense, I'm definitely not excited about, and I really don't know what to make heads or tails out of, is Cleveland. We saw the report earlier today. Kenny Pickett was the number 1 quarterback in 11-on-11 drills. I don't want to necessarily focus on the quarterback here with you, Ryan. I want to talk about the running back. 3 hours ago, Daniel Oyefusi, who covers the Browns, reported that Jerome Ford did not practice today. He's dealing with a minor injury, and Kevin Stefanski said this is something that's been going on the last couple of weeks, but that he's going to be okay. Could the dominoes be falling in any better direction for Dylan Sampson right now? Could anything be lining up better for the rookie from Tennessee, who now has this Quinshon Judkins thing looking really good for Dylan Sampson shares? Now has the Jerome Ford thing of okay, now Sampson gets to run with the ones because Ford is dinged up right now. Your thoughts on this Cleveland backfield? Because it's a mess with Judkins, with Sampson, and with Ford right now with this injury. For anybody drafting tonight, what's the proper way to handle it?
I mean, it does seem like you want a piece of the Bears running back room lately. So the way I've been taking it, as I originally, before the news on Judkins, it was Judkins. Then it became Ford. Now with the positive and the negative news on Ford, and just the style of running back that he is, Sampson becomes very interesting. I heard someone I think it was Ben Gretsch, make the comparison of when the Packers selected Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, and Dylan Sampson becomes the Aaron Jones in that metaphor. And why not, right? Like when you double tap a position in the draft, just because he's the second one, he was still 4th round draft capital, I believe. And so significant for a running back. So to answer your question directly, I would say that I want to make sure I have exposure to Ford and Sampson. I don't know what's going to happen with Junkins now. It seems like there's definitely going to be charges. There's nothing getting in the way, and there could be a suspension this year. And so I want nothing to do with that situation. So yeah, I already have a handful of Ford in best ball. So my homework is to start picking up some Samson because he's an interesting back, especially, I like him more in the version of the offense where Flacco's bombing it a bit more and there's some space for him to operate and use that speed. But yeah, I mean, certainly Stefanski seems to get fantasy points out of running backs consistently.
In the FFPC Big Gorilla, Ryan, the latest Judkins has gone over the last 3 days is the 1009. Still too rich for you? You're not taking him there?
It gets interesting. It certainly is late enough to where you're basically, even if you're RB0, you're probably at your third or fourth running back, hopefully at that point. So yeah, I mean, I would be interested because when I watched him run at Ohio State, he just stood out to me as looking like an NFL back. Just the way that his contact balance and how thick his lower body was. And specifically, like he looks like a Browns running back. And so when he's out there, if he's out there, he has the biggest potential of all these guys. The problem is it sounds like he could miss 4 to 6 games based on the internet legal experts I follow.
So I want to go rapid fire on these last few points here. Noah Fant gets released by the Seattle Seahawks. Elijah Arroyo season is underway in Seattle. If I look at the ADP on this, one drafter in the FFPC Big Gorilla in the last 3 days took Arroyo as high as the 1104. He is right now currently at tight end 26 at the 1601. That is going to go up based on the fact that Fant is no longer there. How do you feel about Arroyo as a redraft player this season in his rookie year?
Yeah, I mean, you want to draw the parallels between like the Baltimore offense and Isaiah Likely and that kind of, athletic tight end that's going to be able to move, going to be able to run real routes and going to be able to be something that operates in more than just a standard tight end role. It is Kubiak there. I do have questions about how this is all going to work. I appreciate how McDonald has been given the freedom to make the roster changes when needed and get rid of pieces when they just aren't going to work. But we were discussing the rookie tight ends earlier. I'm still hesitant. They're still rookie tight ends. It's still so rare that you see someone absolutely go bonkers like the Brock Bowers and the Kyle. I'll whisper it, Kyle Pitts of the world. But yeah, no, I also I don't have a ton of belief. This offense is going to need to show it to me before I'll believe it. Sam Darnold, the whole package. Like it looks fun. It looks fun on paper. The Cooper Kupp, JSN, and a maybe big step forward year, but I got to see it up there first. I think they're going to be a defense first team.
I think you're right, and I think that's how they win, especially in that division, for sure. We're going to get into Rome Odunze in a little bit, but I want to talk about Luther Burden with you right now. Ben Johnson said that he's day-to-day because of this hamstring injury that knocked him out of OTA's rookie minicamp and apparently landed on a football as well. But Courtney Cronin, who covers the Bears for ESPN, said this hamstring thing is the biggest thing keeping him from practice. Olamide Zacchaeus, or I don't know how you pronounce the last name, and then Devin Duvernay, they've been getting reps with the first team. God, I have been riding the Luther Burden roller coaster ever since he was drafted by the Bears. I was down on him, then I was up, then I was down, then I was up. Now I think I'm down on him again. How are you handling Luther Burden? What are your expectations for Burden specifically in this Bears offense, knowing that he is day-to-day right now with this hamstring?
I mean, it's this, we talked about this with Pearsall. In general, I hate that this is a rookie coming into the league and he hasn't practiced since May 20th. These hamstring injuries tend to not only happen once, they tend to pop up. So, I'm excited for what this Bears offense could be. I wonder how much opportunity Burden is going to have. You have Moore, you have Odunze, who, might be BFFs with Caleb. You have the 2 tight ends with Kmet and Colston Loveland. You have what we expect to be a 2 running back system, maybe with Swift and Roshan Johnson. But I wonder already what is Burden going to be in this offense outside of a little bit of a gadget player. And yeah, this is a horrible start because this also gives you the opportunity to think maybe he's a little lazy. Maybe he's not preparing his body. He's not hydrating, whatever it might be. So this is concerning. I would say slightly more concerning than the Ricky Pearsall thing because it's more unknown.
George Pickens went from Pittsburgh to Dallas this year, and I want to wrap up this segment with the Pickens talk. The latest we have on him is Brian Schottenheimer calling his instincts uncanny. And Brian, let me tell you, that's not the only thing with George Pickens that's uncanny, for sure. His ability to track and secure downfield attempts is what specifically Schottenheimer was talking about. Dak Prescott has been talking up George Pickens ever since the Cowboys acquired him. He talked about Schottenheimer, talked about how they didn't have enough explosive plays in Dallas last year. And Pickens, who had the second most receiving yards on downfield targets, is certainly going to help in that regard in 2025. I have not been drafting this guy, and maybe it's because he's the number 2 receiver on this team, and I just think that it's all about CeeDee Lamb. If you go with the every other theory with Dak Prescott, who we'll get into in a little bit, this is going to be a big year for Prescott. Pickens has moved up now, Ryan, to the Cortland Sutton, Jameson Williams, Devonta Smith territory. He is wide receiver 27 at the 509. Number 2 target on his team, probably. Certainly Drake Ferguson owners would tell me that he might be number 3. Your thoughts on George Pickens and how you're handling this guy this year, knowing that Pittsburgh went out and got rid of this guy after drafting him and trying to develop him, and now Dallas takes over. Not exactly the greatest run organization, greatest coached organization, but maybe that changes this year, and maybe they get it right with Pickens. Your thoughts on how you're handling Pickens in drafts?
I mean, it does seem like getting sent away by Tomlin is a bad thing if you're a receiver. There's not a good sample of guys who have left the Steelers and done positive things elsewhere. I think Santonio Holmes maybe is the list there. Pickens also, we know what he is as a receiver. He's someone that's going to be able to win deep, and he has amazing kind of awareness to how to high point the ball and how to get there. Now, to your point on targets, I'm with the Ferguson owners. I think Pickens is a clear third option. We are already 2 days into camp. We've read how much Dak and Ferguson look solid. Dak and CD look solid throwing to each other. And I think, what they needed. Yeah, they do need that deep threat. So the idea that Pickens is kind of more of a, best ball target almost, where he's going to have some games where he pops off with some big plays, but I don't know if the consistency is going to be there. And then, you sprinkle in the uncertainty that I have. I mean, I think there's been a lot of interesting things said about the offense in general by the coaching staff, by ownership. And so I think there's a little bit more of a, volatility factor in the locker room of this Cowboys team this year. And so when you have volatility and you have bits of gasoline and firecracker like George Pickens, there's also that element that I kind of have found myself steering away from. So yeah, I think maybe more of a best ball target, but even still in the range where he's going, I'd much rather have a Devonta Smith, a Zay Flowers, a Calvin Ridley, a Jameson Williams. And so, yeah, not finding myself taking too much Pickens. And also just, I kind of observed that Tomlin is the man, and that if Tomlin says no, I'll listen.
I think the Tomlin thing is astute, and to your point, the other receivers going around him, Jameson Williams, yeah, he's the number 2 target, and maybe number 3 target on his team behind Laporta and St. Brown. But we've already seen him do it. He had a 1,000-yard receiving year last year, and he's still with that same team. He's not going to a new offense, new OC, new head coach, new quarterback like George Pickens is. Devonta Smith, again, number 2 receiver on Philly. I think that he is being unfairly penalized for how much they ran last year. Yeah. I would much rather have Devonta Smith there over Pickens, to your point. Flowers, I'm hit or miss on. I don't know. I mean, I could go Pickens and Flowers there. Ridley, I actually like better than Pickens as well. Granted that offense is not as dialed in and not as potent as Dallas, but I think that Cam Ward is going to lock on to Ridley this year and utilize him quite a bit. If you want to use that knowledge to your advantage that Ryan has just dispensed to you, check out the FFPC Big Gorilla, myffpc.com. $1 million grand prize, $50 discount on every third team that you get. Drafts off and running now. 7 Bananas promo is live. So if you want some free FFPC teams or maybe a free Jungle Safari for 4, sign up for the Big Gorilla draft tonight. Tonight is the last night of the Midweek Mayhem promotion as well. We're going to be drafting 3 random teams that drafted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of this week. and they will win a free Big Gorilla entry, which will be announced by me tomorrow on the FFPC email. So check that out. We have so much more to get to. We had a very successful Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game show segment last week with Bob Lung. So we're going to do another fantasy game show segment this week. Fantasy Jeopardy, the Ryan Kramer edition. That's coming up next. I have 1, 2, 3. I got 8 categories that Ryan can pick from. And I'm going to give him the answer. He gives me the question. You all know how Jeopardy works. Kramer-centric on X. Ryan Kramer from the Sports Gambling Podcast and VSiN. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Don't go anywhere. Insider Access rolls on right after this.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm. And boy, do I have great news for you. It's that time of year. The FFPC main event is open. The flagship contest, in my opinion, the biggest number one contest in all of fantasy football. It's not just about the prizes. You can win $1 million, but if you win a contest like this, you are gold-plated, gold-stamped in this community. That puts respect on your name when you go in there with the big dogs and you win a tournament like this. So get set up with my FFPC now. When you use promo code ALARM, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more if you've never drafted there before, and you can get in there with the big dogs. If you really want, you can actually go to Vegas and draft at the Paris Casino live in these contests. You don't have to do that, though. You can draft online. They have 6-hour, 2-hour, and 60-second clocks, depending on what you're feeling. You're going to want to draft early and often in these to give yourself the best possible shot at winning. And let me tell you, when you go over to your social media bio and you throw FFPC main event champion in there, people start thinking about you at a different way. You are now an absolute champion and legend in this community if you win the FFPC main event. Open now over at myffpc.com.
Not only is that FFPC Big Gorilla live at myffpc.com, for those of you who love those best ball tournaments, we got 2 of them over with the Fantasy Football Players Championship. The classic FFPC Best Ball Tournament features a $125 entry fee, a $300,000 grand prize, $100,000 runner-up prize, and if you want to super flex it, you can do that. $35 entry, $100,000 grand prize there as well. Drafts are both live and slow right now at myffpc.com. We're hanging out tonight with Kramer-centric on the X. He is Ryan Kramer, the co-founder of the Sports Gambling Podcast, Sports Gambling Podcast Network. You can hear him. What is it? Fridays on VSiN, Brian?
Fridays at right now at 8 p.m. on the West Coast, and starting about a month from this Friday, we'll be shifting to 7 p.m. on the West Coast, 10 p.m. on the East Coast.
Fantastic. Always love to hear that. I want to get into Fantasy Jeopardy tonight. I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue to do this each and every week with a different classic game show, but I'm 2 for 2 so far. I feel good about how this is going to turn out tonight. No pressure. And there is no pressure on you, Ryan, because the great thing about this, you don't have to wager anything. You don't lose any money. This is not a game. And literally every question you give me will be the correct one because nobody's going to argue. This is the Ryan Kramer edition of Fantasy Jeopardy. So without further ado, we'll get into it right now. The categories that you have to pick from are as follows: league losers, league winners, premium tight ends, starting off with a bang, no shares, JJ Zachariason for the win, can't get enough, and Rip Van Winkle. What category are we starting from tonight, Ryan, on Fantasy Jeopardy?
You know, we have a type on the Sports Gambling Podcast. We are big tight end guys. Love the first touchdown market. So let's go with premium tight ends.
All right, premium tight ends it is. And here's the answer. Currently drafted outside of the top 12 tight ends, this player is going to smash his ADP, says Ryan Kramer. Ryan, go ahead.
Oh, who is Isaiah Likely? Who is Isaiah Likely?
Likely? This is interesting. Go ahead.
It's the same handicap as I had last year and the year before that. Give me Coastal Carolina's finest. We saw how well Mark Andrews looked down the stretch. We've heard so much positive talk about Isaiah Likely in this offense in a more consistent way, and absolute star of TEU this summer. Although Taylor Swift did perform, and some say she was the star of the situation, Isaiah Likely was the guy getting all the glowing reports from the other tight ends. In one of the things I love to do in FFPC is generally draft 4 tight ends, whether it's best ball or even managed. Love ending up with a lot of tight ends, not spending early capital on them. So Isaiah Likely is probably on 100% of my FFPC team so far. He's the guy I think smashes the ADP, and you have that just in case scenario. If Andrews doesn't stay healthy again, what could this be? I mean, we could be looking at a surefire top 2 round pick.
Isaiah Likely, tight end 16 at the 1109. He has ascended since John Harbaugh's all-pro expectations for him this season. I want to get into Mile High Luke, who's in the YouTube chat right now. He said, "Who is Hunter Henry?" What do you say about Hunter Henry as the question to this answer?
Well, I certainly, the opportunity is there. And I think when you look at the Patriots in general, I like Drake May as a prospect. I think the betting markets and people's optimism around what Vrabel and this coaching staff is going to snap their fingers and do with Drake May, bringing in Steph Diggs, drafting Will Campbell. But all of that being said, I do like Hunter Henry. I think Hunter Henry, it almost feels like every year is undervalued and underappreciated. And as I just mentioned, I often end up with 4 guys, especially in the best ball formats. I'll even go 5. I just think a guy like Hunter Henry. All right, so if you played out the season, how many times does Hunter Henry end up with the lead in targets on this offense? Probably not too often. But I think he's pretty often the number 2 or number 3 target. And so with tight end premium, what's his current? Where is he currently going off in the Big Gorilla?
So Big Gorilla ADP right now over over the last 3 days, you're looking at Hunter Henry being as God, I just had it here. I'm sorry, Hunter Henry. I have to read tight end 21, 13.
Yeah, so right in that same mix with Isaiah Likely, where some people do the RB0. I don't mind the TE0, where I'm taking like 2 or 3 guys right in this range. You asked me earlier about the receiver and like, would this be a range you might look to take a receiver? Almost never, because again, these tight ends are interesting to me down here.
All right, so let's go to the next category here. Still have league losers, league winners, starting off with a bang. No shares. JJ Zachariason for the win. Can't get enough. And Rip Van Winkle. Where are we going to next?
League losers.
League losers, the category that Ryan Kramer has selected. Here is the answer. Stay away. This is Ryan Kramer's early round bust.
Who is Saquon Barkley? And
here we go.
You could accuse me of being a salty Giants fan. But let me remind you, Saquon's 482 touches last year were the second most all time for a regular season plus postseason. The 2 guys that had more than him, Eddie George and DeMarco Murray. In that following year, both guys dropped significantly efficiency by over 0.7 and 1.1 yards per carry. Did not finish all 16 games, and both teams missed the playoffs. I think with running backs especially, and we just saw this with Christian McCaffrey, you have to observe the workload volume thing. And the story last year was basically that Kellen Moore's offense wasn't exactly working, and the team had a meeting and said, we're just going to run the ball. And Saquon Barkley had one of the greatest seasons in the history of the NFL. I also would point out, as a Giants fan, I know this, that Saquon does wear down. Saquon doesn't necessarily play well through nagging injuries, and it seems very unlikely he's able to stay clean once again this season. So if you're asking for an alternative there at the top of the board, happy to take Bijan. Can even be talked into a Jahmyr Gibbs situation if that's what you fancy. But and for me, generally taking receiver there. But yeah, bust of the year certainly going to be Saquon.
Wyatt Bertolone from Player Profiler was my guest a few weeks ago, Ryan, and we played a game called Too Afraid to Draft, Too Afraid Not to Draft, and Barkley was on that list for me, where I had the 3 pick in multiple leagues, and one league I went with Barkley, and I have not drafted him at that 3 spot since then. Here's what it comes down to for me. If you believe Saquon Barkley's an alien or not, if you believe he has that Derrick Henry Martian DNA where he is not from this world, then okay, take him out to 103. I did in one league, just to make sure I had something for Barkley this year. But when it comes down to it, I don't believe that he is going to be one of these guys that rebounds from this 480 plus or whatever he had touch season last year, including the playoffs. I don't believe. I mean, you look at. I mean, a lot of his fantasy points were because of these massive 30-yard breakaway touchdowns. Like that just doesn't replicate. That's not a sticky stat. He's 29 years old too. I mean, I think if we look at this halfway through the season, most of us are going to be like, God, why would I have ever taken Barkley at that high when I had this staring me in the face this whole time? So while I was on the fence 3 weeks ago, I am firmly on the whole, I'm too afraid to draft him. And I will happily take Gibbs over him. I will take Lamb over him. I'll obviously take Bijan Robinson over him at the 103 too. So and Justin Jefferson too is another guy that I'd strongly consider over. In fact, I'd probably take him over Barkley this year as well. Okay. The other thing that we get from the YouTube chat tonight, I think it was it Adam? For his first early round bust, he said, "Who is Puka Nacua?" How do you feel about that?
I don't mind that either. I think, I've always been a Devontae Adams stan, and you read what they're saying about Devontae Adams. It sounds a lot like Devontae Adams is a popular target, especially in the red zone stuff. And I think you just think about that feels like a little bit more of a 50-50 split than the ADP is suggesting right now. I understand why you're excited about Puka, but he's being drafted at his ceiling, obviously there in the first round. And more so for me, I'm always the comparison shopper. When I see the other receiver, like I can get Neighbors generally when Puka's going off, and Neighbors is catching 50% getting 50% of the targets in training camp. The Neighbors could flirt with the target record this year, and he had 170 targets last year and only 109 catches. That's incredibly inefficient because of the quarterback play. To me that's where the comparisons start. And again, I'm not taking Puka over Neighbors. I'm not really taking Puka over any of those guys there in that range, Amon-Ra, whoever else you want to leak in there. So yeah, no, I like that as an option I don't see it as a complete bust, but yeah, someone who's going to disappoint you. Definitely.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm with Adam on this too. And this is another guy where I've taken Nacua in exactly one draft so far, because I just want to get him somewhere. And then after that, then I go with, Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And so if Nacua hits, hey, at least I had him on one team. Okay, let's get back to the game here. League winners, starting off with a bang, no shares. JJ Zachariason for the win, can't get enough, and Rip Van Winkle are the remaining categories.
Let's do league winners.
League winners is the next category up. Here we go. Want to win your league? If so, Ryan Kramer says to draft this player in the mid rounds.
The mid rounds become difficult for me because I end up liking the same guy so much, and I would have never told you I would have liked this guy, but we're going to go to Carolina. Is Bryce Young maybe better than CJ Stroud? Are we going to be having that conversation later this year? I think we might, because of T-Mac. Ted McMillan is a guy who, when you look at a situation and you try to identify someone that can get an obscene amount of targets, think about Neighbors last year. He did not have a fast-paced offense. He did not have a great running game. He did not have good quarterback play. You could argue Carolina has all of those things that the Giants had last year. He just had a tremendous amount of volume. And when you read about what this offense is fixing to look like, when you hear Canales talk about what McMillan's going to bring to this offense and how he runs the routes that Bryce Young sees so well, those intermediate, those short in cuts, out cuts, I think Ted McMillan could end up with a very Neighbors-like season where he sees 150 to 160, 170 targets. Remember, Neighbors missed 2 games last year and put up those numbers. So the idea that McMillan puts up the sheer volume to be a second round pick, no problem. And you can get him fifth, sixth round right now, I assume, there in the FFPC. That's someone who I'm clicking an awful lot as I'm building my hopefully four receivers there in the first 6-7 rounds.
Bryce Young absolutely came on like gangbusters at the end of last season without the services of Teterow and McMillan. He was doing it with Jalen Coker. He was doing it with Xavier Legette, who I think underwhelmed for the most part last year from what a lot of people were expecting. And then, of course, the corpse of Adam Thielen. Now you add McMillan to that mix, and you think about the division that Carolina plays in, going up against Tampa, who, has their holes on defense. New Orleans, who is a complete mess as well. And Atlanta, we'll see on that. I know somebody said earlier in the chat that Atlanta's going to have a top 10 defense this year. As Steve Harvey would say, slow your roll, player. I'm not saying that with that at all. So when we talk about Teterow and McMillan, yeah, now he is climbing. His ADP is getting it's as high as it's been, I think, since he's been drafted. I'm looking this up on Mojo. He's actually climbed into that 4-5 turn right now. So you're starting to have to pay a little bit of a premium on it, but it still could work out. And he still, could fall a little bit, especially if we're hearing good stuff about Coker and Thielen, and maybe that drives down Teterow and McMillan's price. I don't know. I'm not here to look in the crystal ball, but I think that as far as McMillan goes, he is one of these players that I feel like I wish I had more of. I got some of them, but I wish I had more of them. Okay, moving on. We got 5 categories. 5 categories left. Starting off with a bang, no shares, JJ Zachariason for the win, can't get enough, and Rip Van Winkle. Ryan, where are we going next?
Let's do a can't get enough.
Can't get enough. The answer? This will be Ryan Kramer's most owned player in fantasy football this season.
Braylon Allen. I've drafted anytime, there's probably been a couple leagues where I wasn't able to get him because I was drafting with my co-host and he likes him just as much. You think about what the Lions offensive model is. You have kind of the big David Montgomery role. You have the Jahmyr Gibbs role. Now Breece Hall is the Jahmyr Gibbs. Braylon Allen is the banger. And so I'm already getting the touchdown role. But now you're starting to hear, besides all the random draft stuff we heard about maybe a trade of Breece Hall, now you're hearing how much the coaching staff loves Braylon Allen. Could Braylon Allen be the number 1 running back regardless here in this situation, in an offense that's going to be built to run the ball? I think if they have success, it's going to be a lot of rushing touchdowns, which immediately makes me think 10 touchdown potential. We're drafting Braylon Allen where? I would imagine somewhere down in the 12th through 15th rounds. This is a guy who very easy, but right now I know my ownership on him on all sites is probably somewhere around 75-80%.
Wow. Okay. So right now I'm looking at the Jets running backs in the ADP. Breece Hall running back 13 at the 306. Braylon Allen running back 55 at the 1306. Exactly 10 rounds after Breece Hall is going. And then Isaiah Davis running back 80 at the 1909. So he's basically free at that point. Okay. So there's this, I don't want to say a groundswell, but there has been over the last month or so, a lot of people talking to Breece Hall and people are disrespecting him. And this is a new coaching staff and they're going to use him a lot more. What we saw at the end of last season with the previous regime was that Hall was being used, but Allen was significantly involved. Isaiah Davis was significantly involved. You are of the opinion that Braylon Allen, price-wise, sticker price-wise, that is the guy you want. He's going, like I said, 1306 right now. That's a better value to you than Breece Hall. That's a better value to you in the Jets backfield than Isaiah Davis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 3rd round for Breece Hall. No, thank you. I got to see him doing Jahmyr Gibbs things before I'll believe that he's going to be the full Jahmyr Gibbs role. Whereas I've already heard the coaches basically say that Braylon Allen is going to be the David Montgomery role. And I just think when the style of running, it matches, I think, what they want to do on the offensive line. It matches the style that Justin Fields will bring to it. And yeah, I think I'm getting the goal line back. And so it feels like a much safer bet to take the goal line back plus, maybe 50% of the carries in the 13th round versus the guy who might catch a couple more passes in the in the third round.
Couple of things to piggyback on that point too. With Justin Fields in the conversation as the starting quarterback, that dump offs for him are probably not going to be super likely. Running quarterbacks rarely will dump it off. They'd just rather run with it. Who does that hurt? That doesn't hurt Braylon Allen. It might hurt Isaiah Davis. It definitely will hurt Breece Hall. And if this engine is to go, if the Jets are going to be a successful team this year, pounding the ball with Braylon Allen, think about Tanner Engstrand is the new OC who comes from Detroit. What did we see in Detroit last year? We saw a lot of David Montgomery in the first and fourth quarters. And if that's the Braylon Allen that we see this year, where they're softening up that defense in the first quarter with Allen and then just pounding it into submission in the fourth quarter with Allen, 13th round pick, I can get on board with that for sure. And the other thing with Breece Hall too, has he had a Gibbs-esque year in the league yet? No, he hasn't. Now, still third round, so you're paying 2 full rounds less of a price than Jahmyr Gibbs. But to that point, there's a lot of other people that you can be drafting in the third round who we have seen big years from, and you can stay away from Breece Hall at that price tag. Not saying I'm going to do that in every single one of my leagues, but in most of them, yeah, maybe.
Well, you also have the Breece Hall being the top pick last year, kind of like that burning of, okay, well, I'm not getting fooled by that nonsense. So I think for me, a little bit, I got to see it as well. He was exciting. It was it was a popular offensive player of the year pick. If you remember, people were betting it all the way down to 15-1. And so, yeah.
Adam Hahn chiming in saying that he believes Fields will throw to his backs. I know he has done that in the past too. And maybe he's right on that. I could be wrong. We'll see what happens on that. But my point is this, whether Fields throws to his backs or not, that is not where Braylon Allen makes his hay. So it doesn't really affect him at all. That's my take on that. Okay. Moving on, 4 categories left in Fantasy Jeopardy, the Ryan Kramer edition. Your categories that are still out there, starting off with a bang, no shares, JJ Zachariason for the win, and Rip Van Winkle. Ryan, you tell us where we're going next.
No shares.
No shares is the category. The answer is this. According to Ryan Kramer, this player won't be on any of his rosters this season.
So there's a number of guys I could nominate for this award, but I'll go with Jaden Daniels.
This is spicy.
You can miss me with this Jaden Daniels. I mean, we did this with CJ Stroud. We have to pump the brakes on these. I agree. He looked very phenomenal, but this was a Washington team that this time last year we were throwing shade at the roster. We were saying it was very fragile. None of those things really changed. We were talking about how Jaden Daniels himself might be a little fragile. He somehow survived the season in spite of having some pretty disastrous early season passing efforts. And you want to talk about a team that had some positive things happen and maybe some regression is due. They literally won on one of the crazier Hail Marys you'll ever see. And so I appreciate the rushing floor. And I understand why he's being drafted where he's being drafted, but you can't. I cannot get to a place where he's going ahead of really any of the other rushing quarterbacks, and I would include Jalen Hurts in that mix. I think even just the idea that he is consistently going ahead of Joe Burrow. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is not sniffing where Jaden Daniels is going, and so. Perhaps also just a general ideology of I'm not taking one of these top quarterbacks probably unless it's Lamar or Josh. And so to see how early, and in some cases, Jaden Daniels going ahead of the FFPC draft I was just in, best ball draft, Jaden Daniels went first quarterback overall. And to me, that feels a little crazy knowing that he's not going to be a goal line, the main goal line option. We know quarterbacks that aren't named Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts tend to not score anything more than 5 or 6 touchdowns. And I expect his passing efficiency to go down. You mentioned the Terry McLaurin stuff, but there was a lot of lucky stuff that went on with him last year. And if we end up seeing a CJ Stroud like second year that involves some slump, some turnover, and just not quite the same efficiency, that would make sense to me. And so, yeah, maybe he's carried by a 1,000 yard, 10 rushing touchdown performance, but I'm willing to bet against that. And I currently do not have him on a single roster.
I think that's the difference, right? Is Daniels has this rushing upside that Stroud just does not. That does not mean that Daniels could not have a Stroudsian year this year, where maybe the rushing's still there, but the passing's down, or maybe the rushing's not all the way. I am not a smart man, and a lot of times I will tell you in fantasy football when stuff looks to be so good one year. And the people asked me to explain why it's not that good the following year. I just simply say regression to the mean. And that could be simply all it is Daniels, like you said, got a lot of stuff going his way last year. Maybe he doesn't this year. He's got a fresh number 2 receiver in Deebo Samuel. On paper, that looks like a good thing. In real life, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't work out. Laramie Tunsil has joined the Commanders as well. That sounds great for blocking for Daniels, but what if it improves the running game and takes away some of the stats that we would like to have Jaden Daniels get, as he is being drafted currently as quarterback 3 at the 404? Could be an unintended fantasy consequence of getting Laramie Tunsil on, that it's actually worse for Daniels' fantasy stock. Again, I'm not saying anything is a lock to happen here. And to your point, I have not been avoiding Daniels, Ryan, but I haven't really gotten him anywhere as well. And this is coming from a guy who's already got Josh Allen, already got Lamar Jackson in a couple of spots. I don't think I've gotten Jaden Daniels anywhere yet. Let's move on. 3 categories left on Fantasy Jeopardy, the Kramer-centric edition. Starting off with a bang, J.J. Zekereisen for the win and Rip Van Winkle are the final 3 categories.
Let's do starting off with a bang.
Ryan Kramer says this player, and not Jamar Chase, should be going at the 101 in FFPC drafts.
Well, the easy answer here is Malik Neighbors, but I would say
hold on. I got to stop you. That is not the easy answer at all. Well, there's no way that's the easy answer. Who is taking Malik Neighbors at the 101?
Me as a Homer Giants fan, but the real answer, if I'm in that situation, I am taking. I have 2 guys nominated. Neither is Jamar Chase. I'm taking Gibbs or Robinson. And the reason I'm putting both up there is so I can end up with both of those guys. To me, I'm not really interested in any of the other running backs until it falls all the way down to Achan. So yeah, 1-1, I'm either on Gibbs or Robinson, pretty much like a receiver in every other position outside of that for the next 7-8 picks after. But yeah, Gibbs and Robinson, I think the ceiling is pretty remarkable.
Ryan, what happens if you do draw the number 1 and you've made up your mind? I'm not taking Chase here. So you have to take Robinson or Gibbs. Does Robinson do enough to tip the scales in favor of him over Gibbs?
Robinson's consistency last year, he only had, I think, 2 games where he was sub 10 points. He had a number of games north of 20 points, very consistent output from him in a season that it was me reviewing the season that really made me appreciate the year he had. Cause I didn't really go after him too much. I was kind of a big Tyler Algier stan, like running back 0 best ball. Give me some of that. But Bijan was good. And whether it's the big play potential, which you need, or the fact that he's just fed enough volume every game to get there and never really disappoint you. That's what I'm looking for in my first round pick. And so, yeah, I'm going to have some Chase too, but like filtering in some Bijan and some Gibbs.
There was one, I had gotten the number 1 pick in 3 drafts. And I think the first 2 I took Chase. One was a manager league, one was best ball. And then the third one I think was best ball. And I just you know what? I'm sick of drafting Chase. I've got no shares of Bijan Robinson anywhere. So I took Robinson at the 101 in that third one. And I feel really good about it. Listen, you want to talk about the skill set and what these guys can do on the field. Robinson Gibbs, it's very, very close. The difference for me is something you alluded to. Bijan Robinson has Tyler Algier, who, by the way, and just to illustrate my point on this, Tyler Algier is running back 51 at the 12-10. That's who Bijan Robinson has as his running mate. Jahmyr Gibbs, as his running mate, has David Montgomery, running back 26 at the 6'11. If I'm going for ceiling, if I'm going for getting greedy with as many fantasy points as I can, it's Robinson there. Now, I've drafted Gibbs in the top half of the first round several times, and I feel really bullish about it. But if it comes down, if I can't take Chase, who am I taking? It's probably going to be one of those running backs, and I lean towards Robinson over Gibbs in that scenario. 2 categories left on Fantasy Jeopardy tonight. J.J. Zekereisen for the win is the first one. The second one is Rip Van Winkle. Ryan, you take us where you want to go.
Let's go Rip Van Winkle.
According to Ryan Kramer, this is the player that FFPC players are sleeping on most this year.
This one is similar to the Braylon Allen play because I have a lot of them, but it's Roschon Johnson in Chicago. You have again, I'm leaning into that 2 running back system that Ben Johnson ran in Detroit with the Lions. Well, the David Montgomery role in this scenario is going to be Roschon Johnson. Roschon cashed me a nice 2 touchdown bet last year. The clear big bruiser, going to be the more physical of the two between him and Swift. I see a very high likelihood, especially in best ball, but even in managed leagues. I mean, he's going off, I'd imagine, in that same range as Tyler Algier, as the Dylan Sampsons, the Jaydon Blues of the world, where he's not quite free, but you're getting a very nice price on a guy who's going to be a goal line back. And again, if Ben Johnson runs a similar situation, they don't have Jahmyr Gibbs, so it's likely that Roschon Johnson gets more carries than David Montgomery did, or maybe equal to. And if that's the case, and you're scoring the touchdowns, that's potentially a nice piece. And like I said, in best ball, it's very easy to click that button because you're getting the touchdowns.
Roschon Johnson, running back 53, behind the aforementioned Algier. Jerome Ford is right there, although Ford is ascending up. And then Tank Bigsby, Braylon Allen, your guy, right behind Roschon Johnson as well. So that is your pick there. Kyle Monangai, Adam Hahn submitted. Who is Kyle Monangai on this? How does Monangai, and this I told Adam in the YouTube chat earlier, I'm starting to like Monangai a little bit more. He was kind of I watched him play at Rutgers last year, and he never struck me as the type of guy that could translate that level of talent to the NFL. But now I'm not so sure. You know, he's been showing out in practice. There's the opportunity. You mentioned Johnson, but I think Monangai is worth bringing up in this conversation.
And this is where you have they did bring him in, right? You have that element of, you know, where did the player come from? Was he brought in by the new regime? I just think that role, like Roschon Johnson is, I feel like this has happened a couple years where he gets put to the side, and then all of a sudden you see him entering the fray as the short yardage back. And so, yeah, I'm gonna roll the dice again and say his workload. Maybe everyone's getting worked in here, but I find it hard to believe that he loses out on that short yardage goal line role.
Yeah, Monangai, I don't think takes that away from him.
No.
And if you look at, who was talking about this the other day? If you look at Roschon Johnson's yards per carry, it's not great, but he was getting all this short yardage stuff, like, you know, where it's like 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 3rd and goal, 2nd and goal, where they put him in. So obviously his yards per carry are going to be deflated a little bit. So I think there's something to be said about that as well. The Bears backfield, of all the questions we have about Chicago, that might be the most important one. And it might be the least talked about one too, with the receivers and the tight ends, the quarterback, so on and so forth. Something that we'll be monitoring here on the Insider Access show on the Better Sports Network for the remainder of the drafting season. Last category here, we'll call it Final Jeopardy. The category, JJ Zachariason for the win. Here's the clue. If you wait on drafting a quarterback, this is the signal caller Ryan Kramer will tell you to draft.
Now, this all depends on how long you want to wait. I'm pretty high on Trevor Lawrence this year, but assuming you're in some sort of managed league, I think the answer is Caleb Williams. I think between what he does offer you with his legs and just the idea that this offense could take a big step forward, and he put up some numbers last year. I think, you know, it's easy to remember the negatives, but as far as some of the volume counting stats, he's not that far off. I believe he's going somewhere in the 12th round range.
Yeah.
And you know, you want to talk about the clear upside of him. If we're drafting Caleb Williams in the same range that we're taking, you know, Burrow Mahomes next year, because he's able to run for 600-700 yards, scrambling around there and getting in the end zone a little bit. Yeah. And then plus a little efficiency on the touchdown side and just the offense in general. I like that. I like that version of the narrative, and I'm not even the biggest Caleb fan.
The ADP for Caleb Williams right now, quarterback 13, to your point, Ryan, in the mid 12th round. Some of the other answers we're getting in the YouTube chat right now. We'll get to Dak Prescott in a little bit. But Adam Hahn also said, who is Drake May? Who is JJ McCarthy? What about those two guys?
So Drake May, I fully appreciate anyone that wants to play that angle as well. I think I fully expect to see a little bit of that Tannehill, Tennessee deployed, where you're going to see the scrambling, you'll see the legs used. They'll have good wheelhouse throws for Drake May to make, and I like the upside there as well because of the legs. JJ McCarthy, I'm not necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid of how great he looks in training camp and how awesome that offense tends to make guys look. I that's another one where I would prefer to draft pretty much all of the other. He's going so early for me that I like the guys in his range are more interesting to me, and you're not necessarily needing to pick up the unknown. And with quarterbacks, give me the guys who are actually playing in their second year versus I'm treating him like a rookie, and I'm not necessarily loving rookie quarterbacks most years.
What about, and somebody brought this up too. Adam Hahn and Bill Hollywood talking about Michael Penix. Do you consider him in his second year? Because he barely played in real life last year.
He got some reps. He's an interesting one because I think the ceiling for what that offense could be is huge. And I think when we saw him play, he was very boom bust. He made great throws and he looked awesome. And then he looked horrible and incredibly inaccurate at times. And so to me, he's a guy I actually have a bet on to have the most interceptions in the league this year. But at that being said, he would be more interesting to me than JJ McCarthy. I think there's just a natural higher ceiling there.
So that is going to wrap up Fantasy Jeopardy tonight. I think it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. The Ryan Kramer edition, league loser is Saquon Barkley. League winner, Teteroa McMillan. The premium tight end outside the top 12 is Isaiah Likely. The number one, the 101, if it's not Chase, it's either going to be Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs. The one guy he's not drafting anywhere this season is Jaden Daniels. Late round quarterback is going to be Caleb Williams. Most owned player, Braylon Allen. And of course, the player that FFPC players are sleeping on most, according to Ryan Kramer, Roschon Johnson. All these we talked about in a redraft sense tonight, but if you want to play Dynasty, play fantasy football 365 days a year, myffpc.com is where to go for that. 2,000 plus Dynasty leagues over the course of last 15 years. None have ever folded. None have ever stopped going. If you sign up for a Dynasty league at the FFPC, you're going to be in it for the long haul, or as long as you want that haul to be. $100 is where the entry fees start. They go all the way up to $5,000, myffpc.com. When we come back, Ryan Kramer is going to stake his case for or against some, but not all of the following players. I shouldn't say that. He's going to make his case for or against these players. We may not get to everybody, but we will get to Rome Odunze. We will get to the Marvin Harrison, Kyler Murray battery in Arizona, and we will get to Dalton Kincaid as well. I want to talk about that as well. He is the co-host and founder of the Sports Gambling Podcast, and he can be heard live on VSiN on Friday evenings. And what did you say? 8 o'clock right now, Pacific time, at 7 o'clock starting next month?
Basically starting football season. Our football schedule will be 7 p.m. here on the West Coast.
We're also going to find out how the Sports Gambling Podcast Network started, which I think is a fun story, and Pros versus Joe strategy from Mr. Kramer Centric. You're watching Insider Access right here on the Better Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. So much more show to go.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm, and boy, do I have great news for you. It's that time of year. The FFPC main event is open. The flagship contest, in my opinion, the biggest number one contest in all of fantasy football. It's not just about the prizes. You can win $1 million, but if you win a contest like this, you are gold-plated, gold stamped in this community. That puts respect on your name when you go in there with the big dogs and you win a tournament like this. So get set up with my FFPC now. When you use promo code ALARM, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more if you've never drafted there before. And you can get in there with the big dogs. If you really want, you can actually go to Vegas and draft at the Paris Casino live in these contests. You don't have to do that, though. You can draft online. They have 6-hour, 2-hour, and 60-second clocks, depending on what you're feeling. You're going to want to draft early and often in these to give yourself the best possible shot at winning. And let me tell you, when you go over to your social media bio and you throw FFPC main event champion in there, people start thinking about you at a different way. You are now an absolute champion and legend in this community if you win the FFPC main event. Open now over at myffpc.com.
event
We're
draft
drafting
season.
a main event team on FFPC, $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
That's right. It is time for the FFPC main event. It is the FFPC's flagship event, a $1 million grand prize at stake, more than $6 million available in the prize pool. Don't forget that if you register your FFPC main event teams by this Sunday, July 27th, you are going to get your draft slots sent to you by August 3rd. So whether you're drafting live at Paris Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, whether you are drafting online in September, what have you, you're going to have more than a month to prep for that draft slot that you will get August 3rd if you have your teams paid in full by this Sunday, July 27th. Slow drafts going on right now, as well as live drafts at myffpc.com. Let's get into, we went from game show contestant Ryan Kramer to attorney Ryan Kramer. You are going to state your case for or against these players. Now, listen. Malik Neighbors, we have talked about to death. We know how you feel about that. You can spin us a yarn where everybody will want to take him at the 101. Let's skip that. Let's talk about the Bears. We talked earlier about Luther Burden. We touched on maybe a little bit of DJ Moore, but the guy I really want to go with here is Rome Odunze, a player that the Bears drafted in the top 10 last year, was out on the field a ton in 2024, maybe the victim of some bad Caleb Williams play, maybe not. Maybe some of it was on him. Maybe there's something else going on here. I don't even know how you feel about this player. But Ryan Kramer, state your case for or against Rome Odunze in fantasy leagues in 2025.
It's almost hard to, like, there's a lot going on and a lot wrong with the offense last year. But I think in general, I like the idea of drafting a receiver with the quarterback, having them come in together. And you saw it in some of those bigger games, some of those, 10, 11 target games. You see the potential of what could be. That game against the Colts early in the year comes to mind, where 6 catches, 112 yards and a touchdown. And, I personally, I don't understand the huge gap between where DJ Moore is being drafted and Rome Odunze. I'm kind of generally a sucker for the second guy in these types of situations, but if we end the season and Rome Odunze is the number 1 in this offense, I know there's also Colston Loveland there, but I mean, I like what he brings. I like the type of receiver he is for the type of weather, NFC North, cold, but you need a big physical guy. And I like the idea that this offense takes a step forward, and you can feature DJ Moore in more of the Amon-Ra role, maybe. Although even that doesn't really comp out, but Odunze being the big physical outside guy, I'm even thinking of like Josh Reynolds and the way that he was deployed, especially around the red zone. I love Odunze this year, and if we, like I said, if we finish the year and he's the alpha in this offense, that would not surprise me at all.
The next 2 players I want to bring up, I feel like I should bring up as a tandem. The one player was the only receiver drafted ahead of Rome Odunze in the 2024 NFL draft, and that was Marvin Harrison. I think underwhelming is probably the best descriptor for the majority of fantasy players who drafted him last season, and they're hoping for a bounce back, myself included. And then Kyler Murray, the guy throwing him the ball. I have been fairly bullish on both these players, especially Harrison, in my draft so far this year, Ryan, but maybe I'm wrong, or maybe you disagree with that. State your case again for or against Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray.
I get fooled by Kyler every year. He scampers around. He almost kind of looks like a gymnast. I just love the weapons on this team. I mean, Trey McBride. I don't know how I feel about Marvin Harrison coming in weighing more weight than he weighed last year. He didn't exactly look like the fastest guy, but he was a smooth route runner in college. You have to imagine he's going to be able to get open. And just in general, I like this team to be a little bit improved. Now, as far as what this means, how does this translate into the fantasy streets? I'm finding myself drafting a lot more Trey McBride with Kyler Murray than I am Marvin Harrison. And I don't know if that's because I wasn't all that into Marvin Harrison when he was coming out. I thought you always have these red flags, these legacy guys who aren't going to work out. Yeah, he was good in college, but we've seen that before where it doesn't always translate. And honestly, the worst possible scenario happened last year where he kind of looked like the player that was maybe a little slow. Maybe the reason he didn't run and work out was he was worried about what those test scores might be. So the case against Harrison too is that I think there's plenty of other guys that could eat in this offense. They might be a run first or at least run heavy. You have the tight end. I even have a guy like Michael Wilson who I've been liking for some years. So Marvin Harrison hasn't found too many of my teams, but I like Kyler too much to not end up with him because, I like stacking Kyler with one of those guys.
Yeah, and Harrison is. I mean, I don't think either one of these guys is easy to stack with Murray. I mean, obviously you got to have one of them, and then it comes down to how high you want to take Murray. We know Marvin Harrison's bulked up. I am still of the opinion that Arizona and like Sigmund Bloom from Football Guys would caution me on this, but I'm assuming rational coaching that Harrison was misused by last year's coaching staff. That they cannot just have him run all these fade routes where he's got this little tiny window for Kyler Murray to throw into between the corner and the sideline. You got to get some stuff going over the middle for him. And I think that they do that this year. I am still bullish on a bounce back. I'm a big regression guy, like positive or negative. I just feel like Marvin Harrison he does not strike me as a bust. And I feel like because I believe that, and because of his down season last year, this year should be huge. And that's why I'm buying into him. And Murray wants to run more this year too, which makes him a little bit more valuable. Let's get into Dak Prescott here. I know you're a Giants fan, so you probably don't have a whole lot positive to say about Dak Prescott, but we'll find out. Can you make a case for or against Dak Prescott this year? And let me couch this right now and tell you, Ryan, that Dak Prescott is quarterback 10 at the 11:03 in Big Gorilla drafts right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are saying that he tends to be every other year pops up to the top of the board, has a monster year. Great, good for you. His coach said he's developing, which was Brian Schottenheimer has been making some comical statements this offseason, but I think that combined with all the other swirl down there, the maybe lack of a running game. The fact that we haven't even really touched on the Dak contract future with the team situation. There's just a lot of non-football stuff that to me could it potentially enable Dak having and this team having a bad year. Now, if I was forced with a gun to my head to say why does he succeed fantasy wise? Well, maybe Micah Parsons decides to sit out for the regular season. The defense turns out to be atrocious. And there's just a lot of garbage out there, certainly with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb and Ferguson, who he loves to dump it off to. There's going to be points. There's going to be yards in this offense. And at the end of the day, they're one of these teams where you almost don't care what kind of team they are looking at that offense. But yeah, no, I'm not really drafting Dak. I do allow my fandom to get in the way of like objectively judging some of these guys, but I look to the years where I'm right about Dak and I say, see, I told you so.
That's true. And we'll see what happens with the Cowboys this year as well. Much more so with Miami. I think if I ask you about their quarterback here, this is going to tell me all I need to know about what you think about the Dolphins offense in general. Regarding Tyreek Hill, regarding Darren Waller, regarding Jalen Waddle. What kind of a case could you make for, or maybe you just want to go against Tua Tagovailoa this year? We know that Dolphins offense radically changed when he was out last year. And then when he came back, it was still different than what it was at the start of the season. I'll let you state your case.
There is something, watching Tua play football is like watching an AI video where you're like, this is pretty cool, but your brain's like, something's off here. And with Tua, like he obviously is good. The difference between what that team looks like with and without him is remarkable. And, I'll be honest, this is a team that could have the first coach fired. And this is a team that we could be talking about as a playoff team, putting up astronomical offensive numbers. In fact, we've created some controversy on our show, the Sports Gambling Podcast, We all like Jalen Waddle, offensive player of the year. Sean made it to Vegas first, bet it, moved the number from 600 to 1 to 250 to 1. Made the rest of us very angry. But I love Achan. I love Tyreek Hill is one of those. I like him at ADP, and I certainly like Waddle. So that means I have to like Tua. And this is one of those where Tua is always a funny one. The pocket passers who have ridiculous weapons, but somehow are getting drafted way down the board. It's like, well, how do we like Hill? How do we like Achan in the second, Hill in the third, and Waddle in the fifth? But we're drafting Tua outside the top, 12 quarterbacks. That doesn't make any sense to me. So, and especially in a managed league. Well, guess what? When Tua bangs his head and isn't playing, you get another quarterback. So yeah, I mean, if you're not drafting in that same scenario we talked about earlier, if you're not drafting one of the early ones, I ending up with Tua with a reasonable, pairing with his team, even maybe that's fine with me. I mean, we're only a couple seasons removed from Tua leading the league in passing yards.
That is true. And again, proven player coming off a down year. I should be in on this guy. And quite frankly, I've been drafting Jalen Waddle. Maybe not so much Tyreek Hill because he has his other set of issues. I guess I'm more concerned with Hill than I am with Waddle when you take draft capital into the equation as well. But yeah, I could definitely see. And this is a year that Mike McDaniel has to win. So How do you win? You get your best players, the football, Jalen Waddle, one of the best players there as well. Let's stick in the state of Florida and ask you about Jacksonville, specifically Bichelle Tootin, who is one of the favorite running backs to draft early on in FFPC best ball leagues, as well as FFPC dynasty rookie drafts as well. It's an interesting quartet there. You have Tootin, you have LaQuint Allen joining the Jacksonville backfield through the draft this year with Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne already the holdovers there. Make your case for or against, specifically Bichelle Tootin. But Ryan, I think you're going to talk about these other three running backs when you explain your case as well.
Well, not only am I a homer for the New York Football Giants, but I graduated from Virginia Tech, and Mr. Tugboat Tootin, who came by way of NCA&T, but then through Virginia Tech, when he started getting into the testing phase, it was like, will his size be an issue? Because when you watch him play football, it doesn't matter that he's small. It's a little bit of Darren Sproles at Kansas State. He was running normal running back stuff. He just happens to be smaller. He has the vision. That's what makes him so good. He's able to, he looks no different than a guy, 2, 3, 4 inches bigger than him. And his contact balance was amazing. Like I said, his cutback ability, vision. I think that the Jags drafted him to be their dude. And I'm fully bought into the idea that, is Etienne gonna be on this team? Tank Bigsby, I think, is interesting in terms of, you want to ask me what my shares of running backs out of the Jags room looks like. 0% Etienne, probably 75% Tootin, 25% Bigsby. And I think just what you like about a dart throw running back are two things. Could this guy end up with a workload? But more importantly, does he have something significant about him, whether it be touchdowns, pass catching, or big play ability? Well, in Tootin's case, I'll throw out a Keaton Mitchell comp here. I think we're going to see Tootin have some plays that will remind us when Keaton Mitchell dropped onto the scene and you're like, whoa, what is this? Again, I watched him play every game in college at Virginia Tech, and he was something special. And Virginia Tech's had some special running backs, but I'm very excited to see what he can become on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, in that range of 10 through round 14, 15, where I'm drafting a lot of my running backs this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out in Jacksonville. I'm bullish on the Jacksonville offense in general. I talked about Travis Hunter earlier. Obviously, I love Brian Thomas Jr. Trevor Lawrence is one of my most owned quarterbacks this year as well, and I've been picking and sprinkling in some Jaguars running backs as well on a lot of my teams.
Well, and I read a piece about how, the Bucky Irving situation in Tampa, a lot of that was they liked how they projected his ability to miss tackles, and Tootin is very much that same kind of player. He misses contact a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, if we could see something like a Bucky Irving ascension, that would be quite nice.
So I want to wrap things up tonight, and we'll we still got a couple of minutes here. Briefly on Dalton Kincaid, I have heard the argument for him. I've heard the argument against him. I don't know where you stand on this.
You're a regression guy, so you got to like him a little bit.
I do like him. Yes.
He was a second round guy, and now he's a nothing round guy. You know, the pendulum is swinging very hard here. Now, Khalil Shakir is very exciting for me, but I still would take a piece of call now at price. Dalton Kincaid becomes very interesting, especially in the FFPC format.
The thing with Kincaid, and I heard Brett Whitefield from Fantasy Points talking about this, how he talked to people within Buffalo and that said that guy was not right injury wise all season. He was always dealing with something. And because of that, you could talk about the misuse of Kincaid. Maybe they were protecting Kincaid because they wanted to keep him healthy. But the price definitely matches up what I want to do with Kincaid this year. So I'm sure I will have him. If I wait on tight end, I will probably go bang, bang with tight end. And get somebody and Kincaid or Kincaid and then somebody this year. That's the way I plan on attacking Dalton Kincaid. Okay. A couple minutes to go on the show. And I want you to tell everybody about the Sports Gambling Podcast, something that we talked about this last year, Ryan. It started off as something very, very small, and the explosion of how big this has become to having its own network now. Can you tell us a little bit about how the SGP came to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's the old tech startup story. We started in a 1-car garage. We grew to a 2-car garage and just kept going. 2011. So early podcast days, certainly a gray area for sports gambling. Me, Sean Green, we just started talking about football, and that slowly turned into a twice or a once a week show all year round. And then it was a twice a week show, and all the way up to where it's a daily show. And then we launch a network, and we have a couple dozen other shows covering every other sport from MMA to golf. And yeah, no, it's grassroots, started in a garage, still kind of in a garage, except for we're in an office over a coffee shop. So not quite, but yeah, no, it's been fun. Fun fact about us: we've never taken a penny of investment. So we're wholly owned, artisanal small business here, much like the FFPC. And so, yeah, always a good time. And if you're interested, we are right in the middle of breaking down every team, doing 32 team previews as we build up to the NFL season. So yeah, definitely encourage you to check it out.
The best way to consume that content, sportsgamblingpodcast.com, or of course, following you on the X at Gambling Podcast. You stream everything there. And then the YouTube channel, just Gambling Podcast as well.
Yeah. Just if you search Sports Gambling Podcast in what podcast app, YouTube, whatever you like to consume your stuff, and you'll find us. And yeah, we're live 5 nights a week, Sunday through Thursday, and then Friday night on VSiN.
So the Friday night airing, that is going to be 8:00 Pacific time right now, and then once football season gets cranked up, 7:00 on VSiN.
7 p.m. That we are safe for the airwaves there. So if you want the R-rated version, check us out on the YouTube or the podcast. VSiN always joined by a fun smattering of guests. We do it live from Vegas, so there's always some of that activity. The big boss man at the circuit, Derek Stevens, often checks in and stops by for the opening segment. So yeah, it's a great time. And yeah, still can't believe the wife is on board with me going to Vegas every Friday night.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. What's also is going to be awesome is when we broadcast your show live on the High Stakes Fantasy Football, or not your show, but the Pros versus Joes. When you are participating, that will kick off at 9 p.m. Eastern on Monday night. You and Sean, the Gambling Podcast guys, have the 11 pick. You'll be drafting against other pros, including Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros, Pat Corain from Legendary Upside, Scott Connor will be drafting in that as well, Jared Smolin from Draft Sharks, and of course the fantasy guru himself, John Hansen. Have you and Sean talked any strategy on this yet?
I think we're secretly hoping that we can just draft AJ Brown and Malik Neighbors and call it a day. There'll be no real hard feelings, but no, I think we're kind of on the same page in terms of some of the guys we like. I don't think it's going to be super difficult to come to a consensus. And we're still recovering from the first year where we did Pros versus Joes, and we were a longer shot than the all the Joes. So pretty insulting. Thanks to I'm blanking on the odds maker's name.
Javier from Terre Haute. He's the one who makes it. Yeah.
Javier from Terre. Well, he made us the long shot. We went up and won that one. So yeah, we're looking to get back on the top of the mountain.
Yeah, you guys already have a league title to your resume. You finished 2 years ago 5th overall. Last year, a top 25 finish as well. So we're very excited to see what you guys do on Monday night. And we will continue to follow you on Access Gambling Podcast, Sports Gambling Podcast on YouTube, VSiN, 8 o'clock on Friday nights Pacific time. And then, of course, 7 o'clock Friday nights Pacific time coming up when football season gets cranked up. Ryan, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight, man.
Yeah, happy football. Let's go.
Happy football indeed. The FFPC main event, FFPC Big Gorilla, FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments and Dynasty Leagues, all available for your pleasure at myffpc.com. I want to thank Ryan Kramer and Matt Deutsch tonight. We'll be back on 7 o'clock this coming Thursday, live FFPC Best Ball tournament coverage. I'll have a couple of buddies on, and we're going to critique that live on the air. So check that out next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Thanks so much for watching. For Matt Deutsch, for Ryan Kramer, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access live on the Better Sports Network.